Welcome to the Leverage Your Potential podcast. This podcast is hosted by the Director and Assistant Director of Menlo College's Office of Internships, Career Services, and Study Abroad, Dylan Houle and Kelly Davis, in partnership with Menlo's Content Creation Club.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Menlo College's Leverage Your Potential podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Houle, and I'm here with Kelly Davis. Hi, Kelly.
Hello.
And we're also joined today by our very special guest, Keith Spataro, VP of Enrollment and Athletics here at Menlo College. Hi, Keith. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing well. Really excited to have this chat with you. We've known each other now for going on 3 years, and it's been fun to get to know you, see what you've done with the athletics program, with enrollment. I'm excited for this conversation. Let's just go ahead and start with the basics. Can you please introduce yourself, tell us what your role is here at Menlo College, and a little bit about what you do on the day-to-day?
Yeah, thanks for having me. By the way, it's always a pleasure to connect, especially in these times when we're not connecting so much. So it's nice to have outside voices besides the walls of my house. Well, my role at Menlo College is Vice President for Enrollment Management and Athletics. My day-to-day direct responsibilities is primarily in athletics and significant oversight to enrollment management. So prior to becoming the vice president, I was my primary role was just athletic director. So I've maintained a lot of that responsibility as my direct day-to-day operation. And of course, I've had to infuse a lot of responsibility into the enrollment management area. But I feel like, both of those go hand in hand. As you know, nearly 45% of our students are on campus are athletes. So there's a lot of connectivity anyway. And college athletics, it's about recruiting. If you're not effective at recruiting, you're not going to be effective on the fields, courts, and mats. So there's a real seamlessness to both those positions for me.
So now that you've given us a little bit of your day-to-day work, what would you say is your personal mission in your work, and how does what you do at Menlo align with that personal mission?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think, one of the things that I think, a lot of people go through life trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. And I was so fortunate at a young age. My parents were divorced when I was around 11, and I basically became the dad of the house in a hurry. And I had three brothers, and my mom had to work, multiple jobs to make ends meet. So I think, this responsibility was thrust upon me at a young age. And as far back as I can remember, I wanted to be a difference maker. And so I without being cliche, change agent is what comes to mind as it relates to who I am and what I'm about. And so I think being able to take something, it doesn't matter what it is, my role as a dad, my role as an educator, my role as a coach, my role as a manager, is to create change and positive change, and really be. And I've known that for a long time. As early as 8th or 9th grade, I knew that I wanted to be a coach. In fact, I was coaching at that time in our youth program, which our youth wrestling program, which was 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. And I just fell in love with being able to mold and shape and develop and have an impact. And, so all of that said, obviously everything that we do in higher education is a reflection of that. So it perfectly aligns with who I am and what I feel my role and responsibility in society is basically, sum it up, is be a change agent, be somebody that can impact and develop and grow people's lives through higher ed, and I'm extremely fortunate to be able to, was able to know at an early age what I wanted to do, and 2, to really be able to fulfill that.
I think what brings so many people to higher education is that feeling of wanting to make a change and work on behalf of others and help them achieve their
100%.
dreams.
Yeah.
And I think, a coach, a professor, they are working towards that same goal in different ways. So let's talk about your coaching history. You first joined Menlo College as the head wrestling coach, I believe, and built the program from the ground up. The women's team has been on an absolute tear, winning national championships, which is kind of the culmination, I know, of what you started many years ago. So how did that opportunity come about for you to join the Menlo College wrestling team and to build this program? Take us through how you got here.
Yeah. So, going back to the previous statement, kind of tie the two together, that I knew that I always wanted to be a coach, and I wanted to be in education, and I had opportunities. I did some student teaching at a middle school, and I taught and coached at a high school level and taught and coached at a community college level. And, I really started to fall in love with this 18 to 22-year-old range. It's just that there was something that was unique as it relates to being very impressionable and having opportunities to mold and shape at a different level than I was having at the high school and middle school levels. And of course I was doing that, but, there was other role models that were involved at that age. And so there was something about this age that I was really drawn to. And, when I worked at the community college level, it was a different animal. Many of the kids that I was working with weren't necessarily driven to do anything else but wrestle. The academic opportunities in front of them, it just wasn't what they had hoped, what I had hoped to have in a college student athlete. And while we inspired a lot of them and we molded a lot of them and shaped a lot of them, there was empty feelings a lot, because their passion for anything outside of playing sports at the college level was lower. And Ken Bowman, who used to be the director of admissions, and I worked together at Skyline College. Ken was the baseball coach while I was the wrestling coach, and so we were friends and we were connected. And we literally just happened to connect. And at the time, Menlo College was looking to grow their enrollment. I really thought about what would an opportunity look like to be at a 4-year school, and how I could shape that program. And so I got to talking to Ken about it. Literally, it was one conversation, and then Ken brought the conversation to the athletic director at the time. He brought it to Sandy Hubler, who was the vice president at the time. And literally within a day, I was in front of people pitching this idea of starting a wrestling program at Menlo College. And, of course, my pitch was really easy. I told him that I would guarantee him X number of students and I would do it for free. And if we got it going, you needed to support the program. So it was an easy go for them. They were invested at $0. And the only thing that bad could come from it is we only got a few students. So that first year we ended up getting 47 students. So I started in January of that year. And we're really late in the recruiting process. We ended up generating 47 students for the fall of that year. And the rest is history. They got me for free for that first go, and generated significant enrollment increases. And we've fortunate to have been very successful in wrestling through the years. So it was good.
And Keith, I'm curious, just for our audience, what was kind of the jump from the education perspective, from when you graduated from high school and then you went into coaching? Where did you get your bachelor's degree, and what was that bachelor's degree?
Yeah, so I graduated from San Francisco State, and I was in that hybrid between HPER and kinesiology, where they were just kind of transitioning to that. So kinesiology was my undergraduate degree, and then I went to St. Mary's and got my master's in sports administration.
So I'm also a SF State graduate. Go Gators.
Yes, for sure.
um, Really fascinating history there about how the Menlo College program and wrestling came about with you offering to do it for free. What a pitch! I mean, it makes it quite easy, and I'm glad that it worked out. And it's been achieving quite a bit of success ever since then. So you've been at Menlo now for 2 decades. That was about 2 decades ago that you joined up with Ken Bowman, who recently retired. And a lot has changed over the years, including, not least your title. You've gone from head coach to athletics director, and now you're, one of 4 VPs. And a lot of student athletes want to leverage their passion for their sport into a career, which is something you've done very successfully. You had, passion for sports, and you turned it into a career. We know for a lot of students, that's something that they want to do as well. Our sports management major is really popular for that reason. What has been your career journey from coach to VP? And what are some of the challenges and what have been some of the greatest rewards of getting into that higher level administration?
Yeah, for sure. Well, here's the thing is that, we talk about it all. Everybody talks about it all the time. You pull up an article on leadership and something comes up about how that leadership was developed in one way or another through sport, and ultimately at the end of the day, I think that the inherent traits that are associated with athletics, and obviously there's both sides of the coin there, because there's a lot of traits that aren't very good in athletics. Just watch an ESPN episode, and you'll see that. But the inherent traits that are associated with athletics, being able to respect people, your teammates, your coaches, your opponents, it's something that is ingrained at an early age. That responsibility, both to yourself, to your sport, to your team, having integrity, playing by the rules, and ultimately at the end of the day, the athletic world is filled with leadership model. You know what I mean? So if you look at coaches around the world, their whole, teaching is a part of being a good coach. It's a big part of it. But being a good leader, having a good vision, and being able to collectively get a group of people, whatever that number is, to share that vision and to move forward with that vision is really a testament to what athletics is all about. And so now take athletics completely out of that. And what does a successful business look like? It has integrity. It respects their clients. It respects people. It has, they have a basic responsibility to other entities. And ultimately, if they fail with leadership, they're not going to be successful. So, I think because I was fortunate enough to understand and know what I wanted to do in an early age, I really studied coaches, and I studied people that were both good and bad in this sport. And as I said, all the things that are inherent in sport can be done the wrong way too. And so I was, and I've had both sides. I've had coaches that were really poor leaders, and I've had coaches that were unbelievable leaders, and all the things that go with leadership. And I've been able to shape and mold my own philosophy based on those experiences. And so I think that, what has really been good for me in my life is sport. And I think that the things that I've learned and the philosophies that I've tried to develop through life, are very consistent with any organization or operation, and I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to be a good leader. You know what I mean? And I don't think you have to, I think leadership translates across the board. And I think there's things that are inherent in what we do in sports that make good leaders. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of innate characteristics associated with leadership too. So I think there's some traits that you're born with, and then I think there's ways to learn those things. But if I was to give advice to a student athlete, is I would watch every move of every coach you've ever been associated with, and pick apart those leadership skills and try and help develop your own, if this was me, this is what I would do mindset. Because, what we do in sports and how we lead sports teams is no different than running Facebook, is no different than running Google, is no different than running Menlo College. And I think that's the thing that's allowed me to advance my career, is because leadership's leadership, and I think being able to move from department to department and, we can all learn how to do an operation, but being able to lead an operation is a different story. And I think that's the thing that's really good about athletics is that if you have your eyes open and your ears open, you can learn a lot of really good qualities that translate to just about any industry. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
That made me, I'm about to go on a bit of a pivot here, but I was not an athlete growing up. I did AYSO soccer, so it was very competitive. I did theater in high school, but and there's definitely points where I know that there's a certain there's a culture in athletics that I think can be very different from other, the culture that might exist in a theater group or otherwise. And this is something that I've just been thinking a lot about because I'm interested in intercultural studies, so to speak. And that's such a big word. So there are some things that I hear from athletes about certain athletic or team mentalities that I just don't get. And I have to acknowledge that. I have to say, okay, this is something that I just have to kind of put myself in that position and also acknowledge that I don't understand that experience. Sure. But I think that it can bring a lot, there's a lot that that really helps students be prepared for life after college, going into the working world, etc. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, on what are some of those particular cultural differences that exist in athletics that the students really benefit from because they've experienced and understand that kind of mentality.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that the thing that is, poor leadership, good leadership, poor management, good management, is irrelevant when it comes to the things that I think can really translate to world. And so the thing that athletics has that is so unique is family and brotherhood and sisterhood. And what doesn't that translate to? Being responsible to your family is so unique. And, and I know that I've heard through the years from academic advisors when they would email me or call me or, this student's refusing to take this class and they want to, do an IDR because they don't want to miss practice or they have something going on with athletics. And we need to ensure that athletics isn't their number one priority, but their education is their number one priority. And my response to that is you're failing to recognize that the athletics is part of their education. And the values that are associated with that education are something that we should be proud of from a Menlo College perspective, because we're sending those values out into the world. So absent of anything that they learn in their class, we want students that are going to go out and represent us at a high level. And what better skill sets are loyalty and fatherhood and brotherhood and sisterhood and that responsibility to each other. I honestly can say without question that who I am today as a father, as a husband, as a boss, as a coworker, was shaped and molded through athletics, and both good and bad. I learned a lot of, I watched a lot of things that were awry in athletics, and that's not what I want to look like, and so I think there's not a lot of other environments that foster that type of responsibility to others like athletics does. And so when you look at it from a perspective of who you want to hire, I think that you would want to hire somebody that was responsible to the organization and felt a sense of ownership to that success of that operation. And, I hope that, in our short time working together with both of you, you guys can see that my responsibility to Menlo College is really high. I want us to be successful in all aspects of what we do, and no part is bigger than the other. Despite the fact that I manage the athletic department, ultimately, at the end of the day, I have a significant responsibility to the college, and that was learned through my experiences being part of a team. And and I think our department represents a really tight-knit family group. There's lots of athletic departments across the country that are very splintered. Football worries about football, basketball worries about basketball, and soccer worries about soccer. And we've worked really hard to develop a culture of family dynamic and a family unit, and that's all things that we learn in athletics. And I think that's an invaluable educational tool to help our student athletes go on and be successful in the business world.
What you're describing, I've actually seen in action since you took on the enrollment management piece. I know that one of the things you've impressed upon not only our office, but the entire institution is that admissions and enrollment is everyone's job, and everyone has a stake in that. And so I think you've kind of brought that mindset to the broader campus as we all think about what is our role to each, what is our responsibility to each other department? How are we responsible for admissions success? How are we responsible for student affairs success? So that resonates with me, and I've appreciated that mindset. Here in the Career Services office, our task is to leverage what all the other departments are doing to create this individual, and present them to employers. Sure. And say, this is the sum product of what Menlo College has done, and now they are ready to be successful at your organization. And so here in our office, I strongly feel we're only as successful as the athletics teams, the professors, the admissions office. So I appreciate that interconnectedness. What it makes me think of is, how have you developed that culture? So over the past 20 years, how have you impressed upon the Menlo College community that athletics and what happens on the team and in that department is instrumental to the success of Menlo College more broadly? You mentioned football only worries about football, basketball only worries about basketball. And at larger institutions, it's very easy for those things to get siloed. What's been your approach over the past 20 years to that philosophy and making that a reality here at Menlo?
Well, I think, it all starts with hiring good people, and I think that, we are very diligent in our selection process when we're hiring coaches and staff in our athletic department. And we want to make sure that when we do so, that they are going to share that vision of what the responsibility of athletics has to the greater campus. So I think it's really important for us to hire correctly and make sure that we vet our employees in a way that is going to allow us to do that. So that's number one. But number two, I think that it's really important for us to not say it, but actually do it, and make sure that the connectivity that we have with the rest of the campus basically reflects what we say we are. And I think to do that, we need to form relationships across campus, and we needed to be able to bridge those areas. And I think one of the things that has been really good for me is that, in a 20-year period, there's lots of people that have come and go, and there's been lots of re-education. So every time we lose an employee in student life, or an employee in admissions or financial aid or career services, it's reintroducing this collaborative effort between athletics and the rest of the campus. But the one thing that's been consistent has been me, and so I think that our staff has been consistent because I've been consistent in the way we've been able to hire people and the way in the types of people that we want in our department. But that's not to say that it's not a lot of work, because coaches get here and they can be centrally focused in a hurry. I mean, they while they have a responsibility to develop young people, and that's a trait that we look for when we hire people. At the end of the day, it's easy to measure success in athletics. It's a lot different than other areas. You win or you lose, and so they can very easily get centrally focused and lose sight of what our overall goal is. So reeling that in and keeping that those expectations high, because we want to win. I firmly believe that failure in life is because of two things. One is you weren't good enough, which ought to inspire some effort, and two is you weren't prepared enough, which ought to inspire some effort. And at the end of the day, our coaches have heard that to nauseam. So. But what is success in life, and what does a successful student athlete look like? And if you look at the things that we focus on community service, we focus on high GPAs, we focus on retention, we focus on graduation, because I really believe if you do all of those things well, you're going to win, because they all tie together, and the connectivity to it of each of those things really develops, a successful student athlete. And so I think that message is so strong in the athletic department that anytime we get a new person in another area, we've been able to, you meet a Keith Lambert and a Zlatan and a Shannon and you instantly know that they're in it for the right reasons. So I think it's been pretty easy in that respect,
I don't know if either of you when you said their names, Keith, I was like, oh, I miss everyone.
I know, for sure.
So, but I mean, I am on LinkedIn an embarrassing amount. It's kind of the social media that's taken over ever since I joined the career services office. And I noticed that you have said a few things about kind of what's happening out there in the policy world regarding what's happening with athletics. And I'm curious to know what some of your thoughts are thinking about how athletics is being not only impacted by this pandemic, but also that the NCAA said that they now support a rule for students to profit off of their success, so to speak. So I'd be really interested to know if you're willing to share any of your thoughts on some of these greater policies happening in higher ed and athletics.
Yeah, well, I honestly, I think we need a reset button in higher education, honestly, and a reset button in college athletics. I mean, to a certain degree, and I don't know what the answer is to it off the top of my head. I mean, I have my ideas and my thoughts, but my ideas and thoughts oftentimes, for lots of people, it doesn't matter what the situation is, seem brazen and over the top. And I think that the pandemic hasn't hurt colleges and higher education, and it hasn't hurt college athletics. It's exposed us. And, most colleges are operating on a dime. We bring in a penny and we spend a penny. And, despite the fact that some schools have large endowments, I mean, look at what Stanford's going through right now. They have billions of dollars in their endowment, and they just cut 11 sports. I just don't think that the way we're operating and the way we're doing business right now is prudent. I think that we need a reset button. We need to reinvent ourselves. I think a 4 year sitting in a class looking at a teacher lecture style is antiquated. I don't think it is a responsible thing to do right now. I don't think we should be spending the money that we spend in the ways that we do. I think a redistribution of money and preparing our clients, which are our students, for real world experiences needs to be looked at. I think we need to find alternative ways to increase resources on our campus without being solely reliant on tuition dollars. I mean, how does somebody operate when you are 90+% dependent on tuition revenue? It's not a good model. And, and how do you create alternative revenue streams, and what does that look like? And how do you control spending in a way that is more advantageous for both your current situation, but also COVID situations? And I think in the athletic world, we have these Big Five conferences, which is, the Pac-12 and the SEC and the Big Ten and and the ACC. And, so these big conferences are driving behavior that are completely disproportionate to what anybody else on earth can do as it relates to college athletics. But, it's a trickle down effect, so if Alabama is getting X, then San Jose State wants a part of X, and then San Francisco State wants a part of that X, and then Menlo College wants a part of that X. And so, this trickle down effect has made us lose sight of what really is important. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what's really important is being a change agent for students that are 18 years old that have no concept whatsoever about what the real world looks like, and using athletics as a way to ensure that they can be productive when they graduate is what I think is our role and responsibility. Having said that, coming back to this, this legislation that is being produced as we speak about students being able to be paid for their likeness. Here's the thing, there's a small group of students that in a small group of colleges that this actually applies to. When Alabama had football coaches getting paid $10 million a year, you kind of wonder, well, what are these athletes getting, and what is, how do they benefit from this? But take that aside and compartmentalize it. The track athlete at Alabama their coach isn't generating that kind of revenue. Their team's not generating that kind of revenue. Their program's not generating that kind of revenue. But how do you differentiate them from the football players? And that's where I think it's a really slippery slope. While I believe that student athletes should be able to afford to go out and have a burger and go to a movie and enjoy a normal life, I just don't believe that we should open that box up to allow them to go out and generate revenue on their name and likeness. Nobody's convinced me that that's the responsible thing to do for many reasons, but primarily, how do you regulate it? And Alabama Football Booster says, you come to Alabama and play football, and you're guaranteed this television contract based on your name. We don't know what the stipulations are in that. Do they actually do the television, ad? Does their name actually turn into anything that should result in that type of money? There's just no way to regulate it. And I think what's going to end up happening is it's going to really affect schools that aren't Alabama. Right now, the argument can be made that in the Big Five conferences that's happening, and there's nothing, it's already happening. And so this puts some concreteness to the regulation part of it. I'm not convinced of that, but let's just argue that. Well, San Jose State and Fresno State and San Diego State are in a different element than those schools. And you're really truthfully going to separate, the disparity is going to get greater by doing this. So I think the answer to it, though, honestly, is I think the Big Five conferences need to create their own thing, whether it's still under the umbrella of the NCAA or by their own on their own accord. They're just a different animal than everybody else, and I think that if we could figure out a way to separate them or compartmentalize them as their own entity, the balloon would burst and everybody would come back down to earth, and we would all start we would all get back to what we're supposed to be doing, which is developing human beings through athletics, and putting a different price tag on that. Separate from that, if that doesn't come to fruition, if we're not able to get rid of those big five schools, or they're not able to parcel themselves out, we got to stop paying these people the way they're getting paid. I mean, I don't think any human being on earth is worth $10 million a year. I just don't believe that, and, think about, I promise you right now, University of Alabama is struggling financially, the university itself. And you think about the amount of money that they're spending on their athletic program. And here's the thing, is the athletic program's generating that revenue. They're getting bowl appearances, they're getting television contracts, and so all of this money is coming into the institution. But they're spending exactly what they bring in. There's no money being put into the institution, because ultimately, at the end of the day, without the institution, there is no athletic program. So you look at these schools around the country right now that are dropping tennis and golf and swimming and wrestling and, and baseball. And they're doing that because they're not funding their athletic program from the institution. They're funding it strictly on their football program and their operating budget from the football program. It's a bad business model. And so this has exposed that. And likewise, they're not taking money and putting it into an endowment that is specific to cover athletics. They're spending every penny they bring in. It's just a really bad business model right now in college athletics. And unfortunately, it's being driven by those big five conferences. I think we're getting closer and closer to them parceling off. And I think COVID has exposed a lot of things that are going to kind of drive that behavior even more.
Keith, great rundown of some of your philosophies there. I have a lot of thoughts in response, so I'll share a few. And Kelly, I'm sure you have a few thoughts as well. When you talk about higher education is being exposed, I had this same feeling as we were heading into the shutdown and the pandemic from the career services standpoint. I think a lot of colleges had yet to come to grips with why students were coming to college. We talk a lot about the liberal arts education, well-rounded, but what happened with the coronavirus is no one was talking about that. All they were talking about was what kind of job opportunities are there after college? And I'm just so glad that we were able to have a candid conversation about why are students choosing to come to college? It's to get prepared for a career. It's not necessarily for the liberal arts education, sitting 4 years in a classroom staring at a professor, etc. And I think we're going to be able to have a more candid conversation just nationally around what is the purpose of this? Why are students going into the debt that they're going into, paying the prices that they're paying? And can we recenter where the career services office lives and the importance that it has on any given campus? So I think in many ways, higher education is being exposed. Its business model is being exposed in different ways. The other thought I had is about the college students being paid for their likeness. When the NBA, I believe, has this rule that you can't go straight from high school to the NBA. I think LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, a few people did it, and then they implemented this rule that's resulted in a lot of one and dones. I'm wondering what your opinion is on that as it relates to paying students. It's kind of like we're forcing students to give a year or 3 years or 4 years of their talent to these institutions, not paying them because the professional leagues have said you can't come here unless you work for free or pay these or play these sports at these institutions. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that, it's an age-old question. It's like, what do we do here? Here's my take on it, Dylan. And it's just my own personal opinion. It's probably not worth any more than what I'm going to say right now. But, honestly, the number of students that can go right to pro out of high school is so small. I mean, I literally have a better chance of being the president of the United States than any of them making it in any of their professional sports. Here's the thing. I'm torn on it because if you look at baseball doesn't have those requirements. You know, kids can get drafted right out of high school and they can go play pro baseball, and they end up being on chicken coop buses driving around southern United States for years, making $1,000 a month and never making it pro, and gave up an opportunity to get a college education. And so it's a sad state of affairs because, you know, these minor league leagues that have minor league programs are basically taking advantage of families and athletes with this dream of being a pro athlete. And never in those conversations is there the percentage likelihood of them making it to the bigs and actually making a career and a contract out of it. More important to that, even if they do make it into the bigs, the average life expectancy of a pro athlete is under 3 years. You know, so you do make it. And you do get that, you know, $1 million a year contract. Well, you only get 2 or 3 of them. And then you got to figure out what you're going to do for the next 42 years. And they have no abilities or skill sets to be able to fall back on that. So here's my response. My response is, I think everybody should be able to go to pro right out of high school. Without question, go. If you can make it, go. No question about it. You get drafted, you go. But I think at the college level, we should be less restrictive on allowing them to come back to college if they don't make it in the pros. So, you know, obviously if a kid plays 4 years in semi-pro baseball, they've exhausted their 4 years of eligibility. They can't come back and play. But if they go and they don't make it and they realize there's a better opportunity for them to go get their education, we should be less restrictive on that and allow them to come back. You know, people make choices every day. They're not good, bad. They're just choices. But when you make that choice and you realize that it probably wasn't in your best interest and there's another opportunity, that door should be able to be open to you. And right now it's not. So the problem is that it's an all or nothing scenario for these athletes. They either go pro or they go to college. And I think that all or nothing mindset needs to change. I think we need to be way less restrictive at the collegiate level to allow the door to be open for them if they do choose to go do that. So that's one part of it. The second part of it is that I think that college athletes at the very least at the division, you know, the Big Five level where this signing for your likeness is really at play, they need to get paid a little bit. And here's what people don't recognize is that, you know, a regular student goes to school and they have all the responsibilities of being a college student, and they have an opportunity to go get a part-time job that makes X, whatever that is. You know, they can work 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, 40 hours a week, and they can make money to help supplement their life, both their life and their cost of attendance. Well, you just look at our campus and, you know, our athletes are committed to their sport roughly in season, you know, 35, 40 hours a week. You know, if you count travel time and you count staying in hotels and you count all of those things, you know, they're responsible for, you know, a 30-hour-a-week job during season and a 20-hour-a-week job in the off season, but they're not getting paid for it. And so at the Division I level, not necessarily at our level, because we do have a better balance. But at Alabama, there's no balance. Those kids play football and they go to school. And I think giving them a modest salary as if they had a part-time job would eliminate a lot of these things. And it's not like the Alabama doesn't have the money to do it. The NCAA just prohibits it, you know. So say, for example, everybody on the Alabama football team, you know, got their scholarship to play football, but they also had got paid 20 hours a week at whatever their student wage is on their campus. You know, I think that would alleviate a lot of the stuff, you know, and I think it would change the mindset. So I think those two things, along with, I think we need to temper the salaries and the amount of money that we're paying coaches at that level, I think would really fix this thing, you know. And then the other part of it, the fourth part about it is if we do move forward with this name, image, and likeness policy, I'm all for it under this condition. If you want to go get paid for your name, image, and likeness, you can't get a scholarship. You got to pay for your school. And part of the contract for your name, image, and likeness has got to say, okay, well, listen, I'm going to get paid by you to do this commercial. Inclusive of that is my college tuition. And here's why I say that. Because without Alabama football, you don't have a name, likeness, and image. Meaning if you're not playing for Alabama, the platform that gave you the opportunity to go generate the revenue on name, like, and image, then you don't get the name, like, and image. So why should the platform be responsible for paying for your education and giving you the opportunity to go generate money on that platform? So I think if you forego your scholarship, so that you can generate revenue on yourself. And, there can be tiers to it. Some people may only be able to make a couple $1,000s. Some people are able to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, so maybe create a tier system where it's like, okay, well, you get a partial scholarship if you make this much money, and you get a full, you don't get any scholarship if you're able to make this kind of money. So I think there's ways to make it better than the way it's written right now. But I do believe I do believe that, especially at that level, those athletes don't have time in the day to do anything. It's a full-time job. I don't even know how they go to class, to be honest with you.
And therein lies so much of the butting of heads between academics and athletics, is that students are being taken out of class for travel or missing class for practice. And so there's this tension that gets created just to that final point.
Yeah, for sure.
There has to be a better balance there. Kelly, did you have some thoughts on that?
I have lots of thoughts, but I feel like we'll just keep talking for for a long time. So
it's a hot conversation for sure.
Yeah, but Keith, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, because the athletics portion is something I personally have not focused a lot on in terms of following higher education policy. And so I feel like I'm learning a lot right now and being able to really grapple with these concepts. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, if you ever want to just call and talk, feel free. I could talk about this stuff all day long, to be honest with you.
The next time something gets rolled out, I'm definitely going to give you, shoot you a text, give you a call.
This stuff is, I literally could talk about it and think about it all day long.
Yeah, it's clear that you've given all of these things a lot of thought and consideration. Let's go to something a little bit more light and personal. You have a reputation on campus for having a handful of catchphrases. Your athletics department all knows them by heart. A few that I have heard you say: all gas, no brakes. If you build it, they will come. You're kind of well known for these Keithisms. Can you share a few of your kind of guiding lights in terms of mantras and mottos that you like to share with your team, or say to yourself to keep you motivated?
I heard a Field of Dreams reference in there.
Yeah, Field of Dreams reference. Sure. Well, I honestly, these things just roll off my tongue sometimes. I don't even know where they come from half the time. It's what's spinning in my brain half the time. So I get into these conversations and I just start getting passionate about it, and they just kind of roll out. But there's a few that I'm sure my staff has probably heard to nauseum and don't want to ever hear anymore. But ones that really stand out to me, and the admissions team learned this in a hurry too, was one is, if you ain't winning, you ain't working. And that's one that I really, it kind of ties into the one I said a little while ago about 2 ways to fail in life: is not being prepared, it ought to inspire effort, and not being good enough, and it ought to inspire effort. And those kind of tie together. So if you ain't winning, you ain't working. The other one that I say quite a bit is find a way where there is no way. Let's see what else comes to mind. Be optimal in suboptimal conditions. So like right now, it's not an optimal condition for us, but what do? Do you just give up and quit, or do you try and maximize your potential and your opportunities, and be optimal in that type of environment, which kind of ties to, everybody kind of, not everybody, but a lot of people put themselves in two buckets. You're a pessimist or an optimist. And I share with our team all the time, don't be a pessimist or an optimist, be an opportunist. And I think being able to seize opportunity when it comes is really important part of who I am and what I'm about. And, going back to one of your earlier questions, Dylan, you talked about how I went from the wrestling coach to the athletic director to the vice president. And it really was about seizing opportunities. None of them were what I aspired to be. Well, I should say the wrestling coach I aspired to be, but I never aspired to be an athletic director or the vice president. But, opportunity presented itself based on the experiences that were going on at the time. I think the other one is that really stands out to me is give me an excuse to win. So you hear coaches come in the office or anybody and they say, well, we can't do this because, and we can't do that because, and we can't do this because, and this is a limitation to that. And this is the restrictive nature of that. And, and I literally, when somebody comes in my office and starts giving me all those things, it makes me put the immediate brake on and say, hey, listen, stop giving me excuses stop giving me excuses to lose. Give me an excuse to win. You know what I mean? So those are just a few. I could go on all day about those too, and I'm sure that you could just talk to our coaches over a cup of tea, and they'll give you a handful of them too. But it all centers around being a visionary leader. You know what I mean? And I think if you know what you want it to look like, and you can shape that within your team, it really is about. As you said a little while ago, about being all gas and no brakes. And here's the thing is you can't be all gas and no brakes and not have a vision. I have a clear vision of what I think college athletics should look like and what a college student athlete should look like and what a college coach should look like. And I'm very quickly coming to those same things in enrollment management. And once you understand what you want it to look like and you feel good about what, it's no different than what you and Kelly do. What you think career services should look like, and you have a strong feeling about that. You're not grab bag of fun in it every day. And that's why you guys have had a lot of success in career services, which has made my job in enrollment management and athletics easier. If you're constantly reaching under your desk for a new idea, you're screwed. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not a way to win. And, so I think if you know what you want it to look like, you'll seize opportunities along the way that will really advance your program. And I never, in all of my life, relinquished my power to anybody else. I don't care what's going on around the campus. I don't care if we're having budget cuts. I don't care if, we're losing people. I don't care if enrollment's down. I don't care what's going on around us. I am never going to relinquish my power to be successful to some other element or some other person. And I've never been that way, and I never will be that way. And I want people around me that are that way. The minute adversity starts hitting, if you don't have self-power and self-control over your, the power that's inside you, you're in a bad spot, and, so I really want to be able to control me and not let outside things control me. And it's just, it's the way I am and the way I've been for a long time. And I think it's really important to not relinquish your power to anybody. You know what I mean?
I think I've got my next Menlo cocktail hour, whenever we have those holiday parties again someday, question, which is, what's a Keithism?
Yeah, for sure.
Something to break the ice. I don't know. Well, Keith, we have one more question that we like to ask all of our guests, and that is, what is something that you are reading or listening to or watching right now that is, I give people the option, either furthering your education or is just for fun? I mean, sometimes, especially in these times, we are working so hard. We're like, I just want to, read something funny or we'll watch something funny. So whatever you would like to share for the world.
Yeah. I am one of those kind of readers that I'm not big on reading front to back of a book. I find different books and go through tables of contents and try and find things that I think are going to inspire me or motivate me. And oftentimes it'll take me into the rabbit hole, and then I'll end up reading more than what I initially intended to. But one of the things that I'm looking at right now, I don't know if you guys have heard of Saguru. So Saguru is look him up on YouTube. It's got a Buddhist twist to it a little bit, but it's about reflection, self-reflection, and looking at the world in a way that allows you to have control over you, and I think it's really it's a good message for anybody. You don't obviously don't have to be a Buddhist to appreciate it. It's really about self-reflection and how you fit into this world and how you should be thinking about this world. Shannon's really big into it, and she got me into it. So I listen to it in the car when I'm driving, and I think it's they're really good, inspiring, because it's really about empowering you to be the best version of you, if that makes sense. So I think that that's probably the one that, and I don't read as much as I listen to his podcast. But when I see something, or of course I'm subscribed to 5 billion things that I get in emails every day from this motivational person or this inspiration person. And so it always takes me to their books or to their cutouts. But, I like to read things on motivation, inspiration, and self-reflection and leadership. And, that's kind of my cup of tea, if you haven't been able to tell through this podcast. But, it's fascinating stuff, for me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's a great suggestion. And I think those types of books are excellent because it feeds into this concept we talk about in career services, permanent beta. You can always be growing. You can always be developing. You're never a finished product. And books like that, help you to gain further insights into yourself and find, where your own gaps are, and continue developing and continuing to grow. One of the interesting things about college is, the classroom is so prescribed, 15 weeks, assignments, the final, you've learned it and you're done. But we all know, of course, that's not how life works. And that, until the day you leave this earth, there are things to grow and develop. So that was an excellent suggestion. This whole conversation has been really enlightening for me and for Kelly. And I really appreciate you spending some time with us, Keith.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope that on the other side of this COVID is a bigger, better, and bolder version of Menlo College. And I think the one thing that has been different now, what's different now than ever before is, we've had a lot of really good employees and really good board members and really good administration. But never have we had the collective ensemble of people that are committed to Menlo College like we do now. So I'm interested. I'm obviously anxious because there's a little bit of brakes on me right now. Being a control freak in an uncontrollable environment is tough to be. I'll tell you that. But I'm confident in the sheer number of people that are committed to making Menlo College bigger, better, and bolder. And I think we're going to come through this thing that way, So it's an exciting time, even though it's a nerve-wracking time.
Absolutely. Out of these situations tend to arise great innovation and new ideas. So I'm sure that Menlo College is heading in that direction. And with your leadership, we're looking forward to the future. Thank you, everyone, for spending some time with us on Menlo College's Leverage Your Potential podcast. You have been listening to a conversation with Keith Spataro, VP of Enrollment Management and Athletics. Please listen to all of our other episodes on anchor.fm, Spotify, or anywhere else podcasts are found. You can also visit our blog at blog.menlo.edu/career-services. Make it a great day.